less than 50%. So that means that 60% of our people eat with money that is deposited in a bank account. At the same time that we don't work our agriculture, we don't do our fishing. We have spoiled three resources: our people, our land, and our sea. Being an island, we eat fish from Alaska. Having rich soil, we eat excellent from products from the U.S. Agriculture. Uh, as we are dependent, 60% receive aids that then are rewarded, returned back from the production of the 40%. Plus, it's a very consumption oriented economy. And the way that with that welfare money, we go and buy in the stores that come from US, the big chains that closed all our national market, and that money goes back. The money we receive for welfare goes back to these big uh, chains, supermarkets, and all that. And it's a mix of those things, both two things: the dependent economy and what education says that we are not good enough. So it will be via education, and including in our education sustainability projects, local farming, local markets, and at a small scale. If we do it, try to do it, and we have done before, at big scale, we enter in a competition that we will be demolished. So we went to local small scale economy, that one day the multiplication of thousands of small scale projects will create a sustainable economy.
I just wanted to also sort of bring in something that your comments really raised, which is that an education that is that, or anything that encourages that sense of dependency and that makes people consumers as opposed to producers. An education that trains people to make things is a very different experience from one that trains people to think of external authorities and the teacher in the front of the room as being the ones who know and the ones who can do, and then you're just supposed to take in and consume. And I think that's another critical piece of education for democracy. Is it's about creating people who act as agents, who produce things, who make things, as opposed to people who just consume things. You can't, a person becomes powerless when they understand themselves to not be able to do anything and to be dependent on some authority for their well-being, for their very survival. But when people have the experience of making something, you can't take that back from them. When somebody, when kids plant a garden and then they get to see the entire process and then make the food that came from that, they experience a sense of accomplishment that you can't take back. They've been empowered. When you knit your own scarf, or when you make your own, things like that, when you make a curriculum in a school as opposed to buying it from Pearson, all of these different things are empowering, and it lets people know that they're actually capable of of being self-determining. And so I think that's a crucial part of it, is does the education actually empower people to make things, or does it set them up to be passive receivers of things? That makes all the difference in terms of who they end up being.
It's a liberating process.
Absolutely.
And I think I need to contribute a bit to that practically from my experience at the university. One of the classes that I teach is a postgraduate class that's people who have bachelors in science and bachelors in different fields, and they come to education because they want to go and teach, because there are no jobs out there. That's what some of them say. Oh, I finished my BA, but I want to go to schools and teach, but I'm needed to have an educational degree so that I can be able to teach. Then I said, did you ask whether you need an educational degree, or you feel you decided that you need you need to learn how to teach to be, and you feel that you're not equipped enough and you need that space in which you can become much better teacher. So I have these students in my class, and after a session of teaching certain democratic values in classroom, when I say teaching, it's very relative because people have used the word teaching differently. You can teach by giving information. I believe that there are informational moments of teaching, but there is also explorative moments of teaching. And I also know that there are moments where you let them decide and then you create a critical space where they think about what they want to do and how they want to do it. And a group of my students who I divided them into groups and they were working differently, and through the questions that we raise in class and the questions they raise and the discussions that we have in classroom, a group of them came to me and said, "Excuse me, Mrs. Chiroma, I want to start a democratic school. For me, this sounds like what we need in South Africa." Then I'm like, wow. And in fact, I think I need to write a research on how to start this school. I want to do something like that. And then I was like, wow. So for me, something came out of a small conversation. I actually did not determine the outcome of that classroom, but I was so amazed at the outcome that there is somebody's way of thinking has been transformed. And for me, this is one way of trying to produce. I know that word is very, it's misunderstood. But producing, I'm talking positively, in inculcating or developing citizenship, because those who research citizenship believe that we can have good citizenship. But how do we have good citizens? I believe education can help us to produce good citizens, which will then contribute to the economy and the political and the social aspects of every nation.
And that's the voice of Jane Chiroma. She is at Stellenbosch University in South Africa and has particular concern for Kenyan higher education. Also with us, Sabrina Stevens from the United States and Justo Mendez Aramburu from Puerto Rico. I wanted to, you've opened up at least, well, many lines I'd like you to pursue, and I've allowed things to wander a bit. I want to go back one step, and it seems like what you have all spoken about in one way or another is really what a thinker from, I think, a Caribbean island, I'm trying to remember which one, but he wrote about Northern Africa, about Algeria, and his name, long ago, named Frantz Fanon, and he spoke about the colonial mentality, and it seemed in many ways you have all been talking about that. And I would ask in a direct way, so what does education do to try to overcome that colonial mentality?
That's a very, it's a very interesting question, because I'm dealing with an aspect of that also in my research, where I'm looking at the colonial past and how, and looking at how that developed a particular kind of citizenship. We had the colonial citizenship, the post-colonial citizenship, and now we have we have post-national citizenship. So there is those the transitions of the kind of citizenship that we keep and we want, and we are struggling to find citizenship that we can say, yes, this is African citizenship. And in that direction, in the department that I work, I keep taking myself back to my space. I've read Fanon as a result of what I'm doing now. And my professor has this idea, that's Professor Yusuf Wahid. He has this idea of researching to be able to Africanize. He calls it Africanization of higher education. Africanization of higher education.